pastor and a pastor's wife, and how you've addressed those challenges.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when I first started off in my undergrad, I had some preaching classes. And of course, my teacher told me this later on. He said that when I started preaching in those preaching classes, that I was the worst preacher he had ever heard. And he was a homiletics teacher. And the only reason he told me that, he says, that I made leaps and bounds, and so preaching hasn't always come easy to me. I should say it doesn't come naturally. So I've had to work very, very hard at it, but I think I'm in a much better place now than if I was naturally. I might have, maybe it was a thorn in the flesh like Paul had. Other challenges. What would you say other challenges?
I can answer for myself. I don't know about you. For challenges that I've gone through, and this is just me being extremely open. I told the last church this as well. If you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an answer. We've been at 7, I want to say, churches now, and there's a common theme through different churches where everybody's super loving and welcoming in the beginning, and then they start scrutinizing you, and that happens a lot with pastor's wife. So I guess emotional stress is a big thing that you have to deal with, but I think I've grown in that. Sometimes you end up just having to learn to take that with a grain of salt. I know there's a lot of different viewpoints on certain things, but I'm not here to be any kind of stumbling block for anybody, but I do appreciate getting to wear my wedding ring to show that I am married, because there have been churches where that's just not appropriate to be able to do so.
Yeah, and many other struggles, and my brain is blanking. So that's something you should know about me. I am not good at speaking eloquently on the fly. I preach with manuscripts. You'll see me using a manuscript today. I write all my prayers. I practice a lot because I'm not good at just saying something eloquently. And for some reason, I can't think of any other challenges, but there most definitely are challenges, and that's probably not the answer you want to hear. Yeah.
No pressure. One thing, though, that I was just thinking about, so those of us on the board have, I can't remember what the forms were that you provided, that you filled out. We've seen your history and had a chance to see what you reported about yourself, but the rest of the church has not. Maybe you want to take a little bit of time and just describe what you've been doing, like your time at Otis Orchards and at Coeur d'Alene and so on.
Yeah, so it's really amazing how God has kept me in ministry, even though it took 6 years to get a call from a conference. I wasn't off doing whatever jobs. God actually helped keep me in ministry. And so after I graduated from my master's program, I still didn't have a call. I was then invited to a church to be a local hire pastor there, an associate, and I learned a great deal there. Then God told us it was time to move on, and we came up to, we moved to Coeur d'Alene. God opened up all the doors. We would be here all night if I went through all the stuff, how God brought us to where we are at, which is absolutely amazing. And God brought us to Otis Orchards. You might not know anything about Otis Orchards. It was very small. I think there was 9 people. We were by far the youngest people, and I'm just super excited about that church because at a point where they thought they were going to close their doors, I said, no, God doesn't send me to a church to close it down. I'm not the pastor to close down a church. I'm determined, like I said at the last church, when I put my mind to something, I'm going to do it with all my might. And we worked through COVID and everything with very few members, and it was an elderly community, and so it was very slow to come back from COVID and stuff. And they didn't have a pastor there. I was only me as the Bible worker, which was kind of an interesting situation. But God brought that church to the place it is now, to where they have 40 kids and they have their own pastor for the next 2 years. So God has definitely used me. And again, I could go through all the churches that we've been out and how God has used us to bless those communities. And even at Coeur d'Alene, where we thought, oh, this is a big church, they got their act together. But we were able to really help out that church. So God has brought us to every church we've been at, and he's kept me in ministry. So that's just amazing.
I just wanted to add, it's interesting the way that God works, because you never know exactly what it's going to look like or what the need is somewhere, and then you have this struggle of, I don't know exactly where I'm going to go next or exactly what's going to happen or how, and then all of a sudden, as he mentioned, there was no official conference call that's like, there's where you're going to be. So it was kind of like, oh, there's this need of this church here that we didn't really know about, where he did 3 different internships through his schooling, and then having opportunities where maybe they had been praying for something that for years and given up on some goal of growing a youth or a young adults or a this or a that, where God was able to use some skills that both of us can contribute to that church. And it's interesting because you get very comfortable, and then you think that, oh, then I'm going to do another project, and it's like, nope, your time here is done. And then you go to another church, and he opens that door as well. So it's been an interesting, challenging, and fun journey, seeing where God brings you through each of those.
Amen. Anybody else have a question? Or
I just wondered what your stance is on evangelism and community outreach for these smaller communities like here.
Yeah, so evangelism is very, very important, and a really easy place to start is Vacation Bible School. So the Otis Orchards Church, like I said, they were basically saying, okay, well, we're just going to close down. We don't have anyone. And I said, let's do a VBS. And they looked at me like, we don't have kids. Well, it's for the community. And they're like, well, we don't have kids. And I said, no, let's do VBS. And we prayed about it, and I said, God, tell me how many kids to plan for. He said 30. I was like, okay. No kids in our church, we're doing 30. We got exactly 30. The next year, I prayed, I said, God, it has to be better than 30. What is it? 40. And there was a little bit more than 40. And so evangelism is super, super important, but you have to look at evangelism in different ways. So there's a cycle of evangelism, which is a 1-year cycle, where you do bridge events. And so what that does is essentially bridge people from the community into your church. So that may be something that has nothing to do with religion. Like we did like a kids' winter health event at a previous church of mine, and that got people kind of used to the church, used to the people. Then you have some churches are lucky enough to have a Bible worker to go door to door and invite, and then you're basically leading up to that evangelistic series. But the series itself is not the only way to do evangelism. And so on a weekly basis in the church service is a great evangelism. Live streaming, if that is an option, all kinds of stuff, Facebook, YouTube, been looking in on TikTok. How can we put positive stuff out there for people to see in this world? And COVID really forced me as the Bible worker at Otis Orchards to figure out, well, how do we do evangelism when we can't meet, when everything's closed down, when I can't door knock, when I can't do Bible studies with people? And it really opened my eyes up to all the different opportunities that we have to do evangelism. And it's very important, because if we do not put the message out there, if we do not go to people, we're not doing what Jesus told us to do. And he's coming back soon, and we don't want to get to the gate and he say, wait a second, you could have done more, but you didn't. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Questions?
Talk to us a little bit about visitation. Do both of you visit in members' homes, and is it once and that's good enough, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I don't think we've done any, have we done any visitations? She works a full-time job. She has her own business, and so she's very, very, very busy. And so unfortunately, it hasn't really been an option for us to do visitations together. But visitations for me are very important. So I have a goal of visiting everyone within the first year, of depending on the district size and stuff, year and a half or something, just to have that goal. May not reach it, but have that contact at least once, and then that's on top of doing, like, brother so-and-so's in the hospital. And please tell me, if I do become your pastor, tell your pastor when someone's in the hospital or anything like that, because at Coeur d'Alene, quite frequently, we'll hear about it after they get out, like, oh, no, we didn't want to bother you. It's like, we want to come visit you in the hospital, but we can't if we don't know you're there. We're not going to wander to the hospital and go in So visitations are very important. Just visitations together won't be a real option on a regular basis. Did that answer your question? Okay.
I was wondering what your approach would be to a small community church like ours who have not very many young people, and then the ones that we do have are trying to seek fellowship outside of this church body here. How do you approach growing a young adult Sabbath school church?
Yeah, so when you say young adult, do you mean high school and college and beyond, or do you just mean college? Okay, the whole thing. So over my years, I've discovered that it's important to have social events. So at several of my churches, we've done every month we have a game night at a church back in California. It took, I think, just over a year of doing game nights when no one came. People said, why are you bothering? And then people started to come, and by the time we left, there was like 40, 50, 60 kids coming to those events. And now, not all of them made their way into Sabbath school, but they were able to make those connections. And so we did our best to transfer that into Sabbath school. So because kids don't want to come, especially high schoolers, if they don't have any other friends. Like, well, let me see if my friend's going, then I'll go. For young adults in our area, the greater Spokane, Coeur d'Alene area, when we first moved there, we realized that there was not really a true place for young adults to belong. Every church that we visited, we saw young adults, and we started seeing the same young adults church hopping, and we said they have nothing for them. And so we started a young adult Sabbath school at Otis Orchards that had 9 elderly people. And people are like, well, why are you doing young adults? There's no young adults. Well, because of that young adult Sabbath school and us putting, like, trying to network with these young adults and having something consistently, we actually got 2 baptisms from that group. And so by having something there for them, that is what I've seen, and also getting them involved is a very, very important thing.
When he talks about the networking too, it's really not just about your local church. It's really about the area. Like he said, people are church hopping, and it's not like we've solved the problem up there. There's still people church hopping, but I know that it's a focus of our conference president to really visit all the churches and find out about the needs for the young adults specifically. And they're trying to get contact lists of all those in those different areas, and they're trying to do that in all the different areas. And we kind of took that upon ourselves even before that was a thing, because we would try and host things with multi-churches. Like, okay, let's get your young adults and your young adults and your young adults together, and let's do a combined event or something. Because if all of the young adults are rotating all these different places, or they feel like they're not there, they're always going to be hit and miss. You know, you have to kind of bring them to one place at some point in time for them to all make relationships. And that doesn't mean that they're going to end up sticking in this church. We don't know exactly where they'll end up being, but they need to be in the church.
Any other questions? Or?
I was curious what, if you were to define or talk about like what a successful church looks like, whether that's, like, is it people in the church? Is it the number of events, or if you were to define or talk about what a successful church to you look like, what does that look like?
So for us to define a successful church, we need to look at the church in Acts. The message was spreading like wildfire. I think it's Ellen White, or I forget where I've heard this before. It might be Sister White. But it says, if the church would have kept in that same trajectory during the time of after the time of the apostles, as they had during the time of the apostles, Jesus would have already returned. So that's what we need to look at a successful church. Now, a successful church to me would be a church that is reaching out into the community, meeting the people's needs, giving a worship service that fulfills their spiritual needs with the sermon, music, and engages the people. During worship, reaches out into the community and becomes a place that the community says, oh yeah, the Kashmir Seventh-day Adventist Church. You need help? You go there. That is the place you want to go. You want biblical-based preaching? You go there. If you, whatever it may be, it needs to meet people's needs and engage them in the service. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
I've always had a vision in my mind of a little tea house offering sandwiches and whatnot to the community, and focusing a lot on some of the very damaged people. Some of them live under the bridge and whatnot, but wanting to reach out to the members of our Kashmir area that need our help, offering a free lunch bag to them so that they know that they have something to eat. Not pushing the gospel on them per se, but being the living, walking hands and feet of Jesus. How would you approach that kind of an idea?
Yeah, so I think it's really important, because when you look at Jesus, he met people's physical needs a lot of times before the spiritual needs. And so meeting people's needs, and I understand that a church can be pulled a million different directions, and then you're not effective. And so a church needs to establish, this is what we want to do in our community, come up with an evangelistic plan. This is what we want to put our time and effort in, but we also want to encourage our church members to do personal ministry, because that's a really great thing. That's what the church needs to do, is give funds and support and training and whatever it is. You feel a desire, you have a personal desire to do this, even if the church itself can't do it ourselves, if we can give you the funding, the equipment, whatever it is that you need to do that as your personal ministry, we want to do that. Because if we're all ministering in a way that God has called us to minister, then we're going to be so much further ahead.
Hi guys, first of all, thanks so much for coming. We really appreciate that. Hope you feel welcome here. What are some things that you guys would like to see in a church family, and what would be some things that would make you guys feel comfortable in this area? Kind of what are you looking for in a church?
So what are we looking for in a church, and what kind of church are we hoping? Yeah, it's not a trick question. I would say a welcoming church, not just to us, but to the community, where people can walk in, people that don't look like us, that don't talk like us, that don't smell like us, that we can be the catalyst to bring Jesus to them, to change their life, without opening our doors wide open and just say, all the creepers, come on in. No, that's I think that was there was one question on the, and I don't know if it came from this church or that church. How do we balance being a user-friendly church versus an abuser-friendly church? And so what we need to do is take precautions, take measures. We need to protect our congregation. We need to protect our children, number one. But we also need to have some kind of means that if there is, like the other lady in the back, I forget your name, you said there's some people sleeping under bridges, and you just want to minister to them and just give them some like food and little sandwiches and stuff like that. It'd be great to reach out to those kind of people and show them the love of Christ, and let the Holy Spirit work, because there's a few people that I'm doing Bible studies with right now that it's just, their stories are absolutely amazing, and maybe another time I'll tell you their stories. But by being a church that makes people welcome to come in and hear that message and engage them and make them feel welcome. I went to a church one time for Sabbath worship, and the front door was locked. So I knew, okay, well, it's an Adventist church, there's going to be another door open. So we just walked around the building and went on in, and I went and unlocked the front door. But simple stuff like that and being welcoming, we can say we are welcoming, but in action, our actions speak louder than our words.
Yeah, so being welcoming, and also being a church that everybody's willing to do something because like I told the last church this too, I have a hard time saying no at certain things, but also Matt and I like to see where the need is in the church, and then we'll just tend to like, okay, well, that's a need that needs to be filled, so let's do that. But that's also sometimes very exhausting. So like we can't shoulder all of that. So we need everybody to come together as a team where we can all shoulder that so that everything gets done. And like you said, finding what's really important. The church has to have a direction. We can't say that there's so many needs that everything has to be done and everybody's all, you know, out of energy. But just having support from everybody so that we can do the mission.
Did that answer your question? Okay.
Just wondering about training, how you are training your church members. I've been in supporting ministries for 50 years with a very small talent. I had the opportunity to preach in about 50 countries and sit on boards and been to some of these countries a dozen times, but like I say, just a real small window as far as talent is concerned. Now I'm here, retired, and some people are talking to me about being a Bible worker. I'd love to, but if the pastor is the type that can train people, I'll offer myself for you to do it.
Yeah, so I think training is very important because it is a district. The pastor's only here 50% of the time. And so instead of trying to do everything themselves, they need to train. And so training's very important to me. The last few churches I've been at, we've done a greeters training. So as a part of being welcoming to people coming in, we created a welcome center where people could fill out their welcome a connect card, and they could receive a gift. And we've done training with greeters because a nominating committee says, I want you to be a greeter. Okay, yeah, sure, I can stand up there and say, Happy Sabbath. But I think there needs to be a little bit more to that. And so I've made a training for greeters, deacons, working with deacons, and just kind of seeing who needs to be trained and then do the training. And I don't know everything. I can't come here and say, oh, I know how to do training for this. But we can work together, and if it's an area that needs to be trained, we can develop a training program that will meet the needs of this church.
Just thinking about this, I know that we've tried to do this in the past, not that we have all the answers or know how to do all the training or anything like that, but it's been important to try and get some of the younger people involved. So having someone who has been a good greeter before, having a young person that they mentor, and having someone who, you know, as a deacon, and having someone younger that they mentor and stuff like that. So I don't think that in my opinion, I don't think the training all has to come from the pastor, but I think from you guys too, because he doesn't have the experience of everything. But I think that what I can say from observing him is he is extremely diligent on research. And then when he finds a need in this church, he's going to watch every single seminar and everything that he can to get tips in order to help grow in that area. And he will be able to help lead in training in that regards. But there may be some things that he hasn't ever trained on before. So I don't know what the needs specifically are of your church.
So I was wondering, are you conservative, you know, or not? What's your music style? I mean, this is important for us to know.
Yeah, so I would say I'm conservative theologically. So what does that mean? I believe the Bible says what it says. Being at La Sierra University, they try to tell you certain things like, well, that's not really what the text is saying. It really means this or that, and it doesn't fit under the umbrella. But I just look at it and say, no, this is what the Bible says, and that's all it is. It's what does the Word of God say. Music-wise, me personally, I like more contemporary music, but I will not force my interests in music on a church. If a church wants to introduce maybe some guitar music and stuff, some newer songs and stuff, I play guitar, I sing, but being the lead pastor of 2 churches, probably won't have a lot of time for that. I've started praise teams in the past. If the church just wants to stay with hymns are very beautiful and can be done very amazingly. And I don't know if that answered your question or not. Yeah.
Roll stuff, and there are those churches out there, and yeah. You're not, you are.
So, I like contemporary Christian music.
Yep.
The current church I'm at, we have praise teams. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone to play the organ. We had one last person, and he had a stroke, and so our organ just collects dust. But there's some really amazing organ players out there, and it can be done very beautifully. And it just happens that this church, the church has decided, I did not have a part in this, to go with more contemporary music with hymns done in more of a modern way. Yes, I would say that's my style. If I was not a pastor and I had to choose a church to go to, I'd probably go to a more contemporary church with more modern music. But I would not force that on a church.
Okay, my daughter went to a church that the platform was a band set up, and this is not, I don't think, what we want.
Yeah, I don't think that would work at this church, and that's
Okay.
not something that. and for those who like the contemporary music, there's churches out there, but we're not going to turn this church into, I guess, a rock and roll church, I guess.
Okay.
We've been doing some reading and contemplation of Ellen White has said things about the downside of culturally of having settled pastors over churches, of having churches be pastor dependent, I think, in a lot of things, and read some books about that were coming out from Russell Burrell. I don't know if you've read some of these books that came out some time ago that talk about how churches should be run. We live in a society that's it's a spectator society to a large extent, and just thinking about this and how should a church be run, and what's the role of a pastor in facilitating, in other words, I think she speaks that it's not necessarily the pastor's role to do the ministry, for instance. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are and how you've thought about how this actually impacts the way a church should operate.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you bring this up. I was at a pastor's retreat a few months ago, and there's a quote from Ellen White. It says, "There may come a time when it is necessary for the pastor to preach." So what is she saying with that? It may be necessary for a pastor to preach. But that means church members should take an active role and preach. And so really the role of a pastor in a district versus a soul church. A soul church, you're preaching every week. You can put all your time and energy into that church. But in a district, the pastor is supposed to train people, give them the support they need to be able to do ministry, because the pastor can't do everything. And I've visited some churches that have said, no, the pastor, you do everything. You do Sabbath school, you do church, you do this, you lead this. But pastors come and go. And so it's really important that church members are trained by the pastor to do preaching. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to preach every 2 months. No, that's that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the pastor shouldn't be doing everything, but leading the flock and training and figuring out or helping people figure out their passions. Because if someone's passionate about something, then they're going to run with it. But if the nominating committee is like, hey, Joe, can you do this? I guess so. And then they get burnt out much quicker. So I don't know if that answered your question or not. Do you have a follow-up? No? Okay.
Hello. You mentioned riding motorbikes. What's the longest trip you've been on, and do you both ride, or?
So we haven't done long motorcycle trips. We have a Honda VTX 1800 with a Mustang seat, so it's very comfortable for me, maybe not as comfortable for her. There's a backrest, and people say you're going to kill yourself. It's huge. I say go big or go home. We haven't done long trips, and we wanted to get a big bike so we can go wherever and stuff like that. So we're not. Yeah, we've done all day. We haven't done it overnight. We don't have a trailer yet. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah.
Looking at the time, I want to make sure that we give you guys the opportunity to ask some questions of us. And so maybe we'll start that now and see how that goes.
Okay, so first question, what does a Sabbath day look like? What are kind of the activities that are regularly, weekly, monthly, and of those activities, what is expected of the pastor and wife to be present?
I'll answer if someone else would like to. They're welcome to. But so we have, of course, our regular Sabbath services. We start with Sabbath school. We have the is it primary and up, or is it juniors and up? Yeah. So the kids are in here, except for the very younger ones. We start with a song service, and then we have superintendent remarks, and then we break for classes. And so that's when those younger or those older classes of the children's classes separate also. And then we have our regular church service. So that goes till, we start at 9:15 with songs, 9:30 superintendent remarks. Go till 10:40 with Sabbath school classes. Start our church service at 10:50 with, it's not very, the point is that we try to give time between Sabbath school and church, but there's a song service that kicks off church, and then the regular program starts. We're quite traditional in the order of service. Everyone's welcome to participate in things. And then in the past years ago we had a weekly prayer meeting, and in that it was, this was quite a long time ago. It was pretty much run by the kids. They would start with quite a few songs, and then we'd literally break into prayer groups, and sometimes there'd be a Vespers talk. It was so long ago. Someone can help me. Oh, okay. And the kids were doing that. Okay. All right. And then multiple families within the church adopted young children, and that kind of ended that sort of midweek service format. And so more recently, our pastor had a weekly prayer meeting that was more of like a study. I don't know how you'd characterize a Bible study, sort of. Yeah, he was going through books of the Bible. Attendance was pretty small for that. And then since he left, we haven't been able to pull off a midweek service, but we just started. We're planning to start soon, this month, I think, with that, again, to resume that. But it'd be more kind of the former format that we had with lots of people involved.
I never really thought of having a midweek prayer meeting for kids. I like that idea.
Yeah, it wasn't specific for kids, but the kids were
Yeah.
very much involved in it.
Okay. And then in anything else during the week that's on a regular basis? I know there's elders meeting, board meeting, that kind of stuff every month. But any other regular stuff?
Yeah, you want to talk about that real quick?
We have like an after-school program for the kids. The public elementary school is just a couple blocks away, and so we have some of them from the middle school too, and so we have a after-school program that does mostly science experiments and stuff. So that's what it's every Tuesday. Is it? No, it's Wednesdays now. Wednesdays this year. It was Tuesdays last year. And there's Bible stories and stuff as part of it. It's kind of a VBS. We did it as a summer camp this summer more instead of VBS, but yeah. Oh, and last year you had an exercise program.
Well, we were doing an exercise class in the room over there that was free to the community. We would do circuit training, so we did that twice a week. Overall, though, my opinion is that our church doesn't like to come out to stuff. So we come to church and we do special events sometimes, but overall we don't like to do stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I was just going to add, after church, we have a group that's been meeting for prayer, and whoever wants to join.
We sing at Mountain Meadows as a assisted living. It's after our potluck. We do potluck. Oh, yeah, we do potluck. We do potluck one Sabbath a month, second Sabbath every month, and after that there's singing at the assisted living facility up in Leavenworth. And yeah, we in the summer we do hikes, not so much as we used to, but definitely that's something we regularly do. And then once a year, the whole church goes to the Rosario Beach, the Walla Walla University facility there by Deception Pass. Oh, and then we do an annual talent night because it takes us a year to get our stuff prepared for the next one. Yeah. Cashmere has a community. It's just coming in from all sides here. Cashmere has a community dinner that I think was it the Methodist Church that started that, and they have a dinner for the whole community. Anyone can come and be fed there. And we have once a month, once every other month, Cashmere Church puts that on, and we're famous for, what do you think we serve? Haystacks. Yeah, haystacks. Right, yeah. I was thinking local. Yeah, apple fritters. Yeah. Haystacks? Yeah. Oh, yeah, we've taken a hiatus in that, but annually the community, at the Wenatchee Church, they had a Journey to Bethlehem that was a huge community outreach of thousands and thousands of people came through it. Yeah. We have some shepherds here, yeah.
I'm a physical therapist, and this past week, I had one of my patients ask, are you guys gonna do Journey to Bethlehem this year? So there's a lot of folks in the community that are, yeah.
Maybe a follow-up question to that I have is, so just context-wise, we're both introverts, so we love being around you guys. We love getting to know you and everything, but that means that after, we want to go rest too, you know? So, and as he's mentioned, for those of you that were in on the other interview, that, you know, he reserves Sundays for our time, right? And that doesn't mean that we're not willing to do, you know, fun other activities at certain times or whatever, but just kind of knowing how we have to balance between both churches and personal life. I run a business as well, as he said. What kind of expectations would you guys be looking for? How many of those activities you want myself to come to? Not saying that that's a reality, but would it be your expectation that, well, we would really like to see you be at most of those kind of things, you know? Like, what does that look like to you guys?
Well, first of all, there's a number of other introverts in the church. I'm married to one of them. So they'll know how to respect that. I think we've missed having our pastor come on some of the church hikes in the summer. So hopefully, I mean, that personally, that would be maybe not every hike, but a good share of them.
So I think I can speak for a lot of people. I work in healthcare, so in the evenings I'm not available to be actually in some of the activities because of my schedule. And I know a lot of people in the church have odd schedules, so I can really appreciate and understand how you would want to have a day for your family on Sunday. I understand that. And I've been frustrated. I wish I could be here all the time, but I can't because of my scheduling and my work. And that's just a reality of life, that we all have various occupations, and sometimes we can't always be here, even though we would love to be here. It's just a reality of life.
And if you think about Jesus, he needed his time to recharge, so it's perfectly understandable. It's a part of growing in the Lord to have that quiet time.
Did we answer your question there?
Yes.
Okay.
That's very helpful. So what are some areas that your church is strong in, and what are some areas of weakness? Don't want to open a can of worms, but...
Our church, we've been here a long time, so we've seen people come and go. But in the last, I don't know how many years, a lot of people have come in with small children. And we've had a music program where the kids actually sang in a choir and stuff. Of course, those kids are now young adults. But I think I feel myself that we're pretty active with all the children. There's some people that are a whole lot younger than I am that are more active. But I think kids are first in our thoughts of the church and stuff. And we like to do the music program, you know, we haven't always had that. So when the kids came and they started the music program, now they're away at school, we need to recruit more kids so we can have those programs again.
We've done some programs, like depression recovery programs and things like that, and we've had initiatives that have started to take more of a healthcare sort of ministry to the community, but they've faltered, and part of it is people involved have moved away and stuff like that. So but it's been an interest, but we've had trouble actually following through and doing keeping something like that sustained. So, but we've had some good efforts. We've had very successful depression recovery programs, but they haven't netted participants in our church. They've been part of the larger community, and they've stayed within their own communities they came from. So.
I think we have one more question. Have you ever done an NCD assessment or natural church development assessment? Is the church open to regularly doing an assessment?
Do you recall, it seems like, didn't Jason Canfield want to do that with it? I can't remember. I know it's come up in the past, and I don't remember what happened with that. It's been, yes, it may have been discussed at one point, but I don't know if it ever materialized. I don't recall it actually materializing. So that's that thing where you're analyzing people's gifts or whatever.
Yeah, it's a personal assessment. So the church, they take a sampling of the church who regularly attends, and you do a self-assessment. And so it gives you areas, so that the idea is you look, it tells you an area of growth, and you can strategically plan to say, this is where our weaknesses are. This is our lowest weakness. And when you do those few things to raise that weakness up, it actually raises up the score of the other ones. And so you just strategically, every year you can do it, and you say, okay, this is where we were last year, where are we this year? Because as you work on an area that you need to work on, it is no longer maybe a weakness, but there's somewhere else that has dropped below. And so it's kind of like a regular thing to do a self-assessment. And it sounds like a lot of work, but that can really help the church have a direction and figure out, okay, well, we would love to do this, but it focuses your attention and says, this is where we need to work on, this is what we want to do, and try to bring that up. So I think, any other questions?
You mentioned about a lot of children and how that's a big focus in this church. I'm just curious, do you guys feel like your church is growing because of that focus, or do you think there's areas where you guys are shrinking? Just general consensus of your church growth over the last few years?
Thank you.
From my little perspective, I would say that we just need leadership. We just need leadership. Everyone is extremely busy here, and I think, I've only been here a year, but I've been coming for 20 years because my daughter lives here, and I've always been impressed with the young people, the choirs, the number of young people, and how everyone got along together. But young people grow up, and then they go off, they get married, they go to some other church, or they leave altogether, whatever it might be. So in my estimation, I don't think that we need a pastor to do everything. This church can go on and on and on without a pastor. There's no doubt about it. But if we had a degree of leadership that would organize something and not take everyone's time, because everyone doesn't have a lot of time, we can organize small things, get that going, and grow exponentially. I think we can succeed well enough.
Okay, we're running out of time here. Do you have more questions for us, or does anybody else have any questions for the Burtons?
I've just been on one mission trip. In 2009, I preached the evangelistic series in the Philippines. That's actually the only mission trip I've been on. Yes. most definitely. So the reason I didn't go on a lot of mission trips, and a lot of students at La Sierra went on year-long mission trips and like all that kind of stuff, but I never felt the pull to do that, because I said, why am I going to go somewhere else if I can minister to the people right here in my community? That's where my passion was. I just didn't think it was super necessary in my college time, but it's very important, because it was on that mission trip that I decided that I was going to be a pastor for the rest of my life. That was kind of my road to Damascus moment. Except I wasn't persecuting Christians, but I just wasn't sure if God was really calling me into ministry, and that really solidified it. So mission trips are very important. I will support mission trips. Mission trips are a great opportunity to get out of our comfort zone. And I used to be very nervous to preach, and that was just horrible for me. But I said, if I'm going to be a pastor, I got to push through. I'm in favor of mission trips.
I kind of second what Frank was saying about the church. I perceive that people are super busy, and there's a lot of really wonderful people in this church. And I've kind of had the perspective of going through extremely difficult time as I was getting to know people in this church. And so my question is kind of related to that, because my perception is that busy people have a hard time figuring out how to connect with each other and to figure out the needs of the church. Do you have ideas or experiences of how to get busy people who really care and will help when they know there's a need, but you kind of have to like ask for it or seek for it? How are we going to help people who aren't asking for help? How are we going to figure that out? How do we connect together?
Yeah, so how do we get people who are very busy to connect? And it's not an easy thing to do, but in my experience, like with the youth and young adults, is to have even just a few events during the year, and have, like, let's say, just an all-church game night. We do a game night every month with the youth, but that won't work for adults. But maybe a game night, or a Christmas social, or a Thanksgiving social, or a New Year's party, or something for the whole church to come together, and just a few times a year, and start with that, and try to make those connections, because as we connect with one another, we become like a support group for one another, and going through the stress of life, and everyone goes through somewhat of a similar path. Some people struggle with the same things as other people and stuff, so we can be that support group and just try to bring everyone together, even just a couple times a year to connect with one another.
I've been a part of this church for 45 years, I think, and I have been actively involved. I was the teacher when we had the small school. In the last year, as husband has been living at Mountain Meadows, I have felt really out of touch. And I've had a couple church members that I know they schedule it. They phone me and just bring me up to date on what's going on. Because when you can't come every week, when you can't, but being able to visit with somebody and have somebody tell you, this is the need, this is the prayer request, this is going on with this family, you feel like you're still a part of it, even though you can't be here all the time. And I have appreciated this congregation, the people that do phone, and yeah, I think a phone call and a prayer together is really part of keeping in touch.
That's great. I'm glad you brought that up, because part of my theory, or I can't think of the right word, of my method of visitations is I don't go by myself. I take an elder or a church member to go do visitations, because the goal is to connect. So I want to connect with the church members, but I want the leadership to connect with the church members so that they feel comfortable enough with going and do visitations, because when a time comes when you either don't have a pastor or the pastor is unavailable to do a visitation, the people will feel comfortable enough, yeah, I'm going to go do a visitation, or I'm going to go do this anointing service. Pastor is not available right now, but we're going to go and we're going to go lay hands on this person, pray for them, visit them, because it is tough for people that cannot make it to church on a regular basis. And it's great when the church members can connect with individuals that may have not be able to be present at church, and make them feel part of they're still a part of our church. And so I think that's very important. And I'm happy that there are some church members that take that time to come and make you feel like you are a part of the family, even if you can't come every Sabbath. They're being intentional.
So I'm wondering how you guys would describe your relationships with the people at the other churches that you've been to. Like, how do you approach relationships with people? Is it mostly like professional feelings towards everybody in the church, or is it kind of more like you feel like you gel with them like they're your family? How does those dynamics play out, and is it different, from place to place that you've been? Follow up to that is, where do you guys find your closest friends? Like, who are those people for you?
So the closest friends would be each other, because it almost seems like we've been moving every 2 to 3 years. And it's very difficult because we forge bonds with our church members, and it's just like leaving family. And it's never an easy thing to do. When God said, it's time to move on, it's usually like, oh, we're finally getting somewhere. And so, yeah, I mean, our church family is our family.
Yeah, I echo that. Is we do like to get to know the people and become friends with the people, and each church is different, so sometimes you find somebody that you like, you guys are so similar that you become best friends, and then sometimes not. I'm also an emotional person, so like I'm just thinking back to one of the churches we were at where we actually got really, really involved with some of the young adults, and leaving that church was very hard, and I'm still in contact with some of those people. We still talk, and sometimes maybe we go a couple months where we don't, and then we talk a lot more. So I would love to be friends with all of you guys. But that is very hard because, you know, when you do forge those close bonds, then it's really hard when you leave. So.
Time to break for our meal, and this has been, I think this has been wonderful. I really appreciated you guys' patience with all our questions, and I hope we answered yours. And we'll have opportunity now to have more fellowship when we eat here. But how about maybe we should just have our blessing right now for the meal. Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful that you brought us all here together today, and that you have taken such good care of us and blessed us with this opportunity to connect with the Burtons, and also that you've blessed us with a warm place to do so and with food. So we ask your blessing on this food tonight, and we ask your blessing on our fellowship as well, and we thank you for that. In Jesus' name, amen.